The European Commission wants to eliminate citizenship by investment in the Caribbean. 5 countries just got the same letter from Brussels. Shut down your CBI program by 2028 or lose visa-free access to Europe. IMI has read that letter and tracked every response. In this video, you'll learn what comes next and whether this threat even matters. On June 25th, the European Commission sent Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister a formal letter. It asked the country to phase out its citizenship by investment program by June 1st, 2028. The letter was signed by the EU's Commissioner for Internal Affairs and Migration, but the face behind the policy is the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Brussels is offering a 24-month transition window to wind the program down. A deadline like this only has teeth if the EU has the leverage to enforce it, and that it does. The legal basis is new, though. The EU's revised visa suspension mechanism entered into force in December 2025. Under that framework, simply operating a CBI program, regardless of how well it is managed, now counts as a self-standing ground for suspending a country's visa-free access to the Schengen Area. Let's repeat. The EU no longer has to prove that a program is poorly run or that it let a criminal slip through. The program existing at all is enough. The Commission staked out that exact position in its 8th Visa Suspension Mechanism report in December 2025, and the reform that made it possible was adopted just a month earlier in November, adding citizenship by investment to the list of reasons the EU can retract a visa waiver. That legal change is why 5 Caribbean governments, not one, are now facing the same choice. This was never aimed at Antigua and Barbuda alone. Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia have all received similar correspondence from the Commission. At the time, Antigua's Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, went public with its letter. None of the other 4 governments had confirmed receiving theirs. Interestingly, though, one country was left off the list. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is planning to launch its own citizenship by investment program in 2026. Yet Brussels said nothing to its government leaders. The Commission's framing covers active programs only, so a program that hasn't opened its doors yet is not in the EU's crosshairs for now. By the way, inside IMI Sovereigns, our private community for investors pursuing and managing global portfolios, we track developments like this the moment they break, and our editorial team runs frequent Sovereign Signals live sessions with an ear to the ground in over 100 jurisdictions. If you want to hear where this is heading before it's public news, that's where the conversation happens. Link and discount are in the description. Now, the year 2028 is getting all the attention here, but there's a deadline that arrives much sooner. The letter asks for interim measures in place no later than September 2026. 2 things specifically: full exclusion of anyone subject to EU restrictive measures, and 2, reinforced vetting for applicants of every nationality. Antigua's response then feeds directly into the EU's next Visa Suspension Mechanism report, due December 2026. But the Prime Minister believes the country could lose visa-free access to Europe before the end of 2026, well ahead of that 2028 phase-out date. So with Brussels holding this much leverage, why is the Prime Minister refusing to fold? Because the program is pivotal to the country's development plans. The government calls its CIP a critical pillar of its non-tax revenue base, money that over the years has funded hospitals, schools, infrastructure, and disaster recovery. Antigua and Barbuda has stated that it will not be pressured into a unilateral phase-out that could cause irreparable harm to the national economy and the welfare of its citizens. Now, notice that the government is not rejecting dialogue with Europe. Rather, it is rejecting the idea of walking away from a core revenue stream with nothing credible lined up to replace it. The EU hasn't come empty-handed, at least on paper. It has pointed to its global gateway investment agenda as a way to support the country's sustainable development. The problem from Antigua's side of the table is that none of these offers are quantified, binding, or explicitly framed as replacement revenues for what the CIP brings in. So for the Caribbean island government, any agreed path forward has to include tangible EU assistance in generating equivalent replacement revenues to offset the economy hit of any transition. As a gesture of good faith, Prime Minister Brown says it will continue excluding EU-sanctioned individuals, reinforce vetting for all other nationalities, and add whatever additional safeguards the EU's security standards require. It's pursuing diplomacy on two tracks at once, bilaterally with Brussels and collectively through the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Even so, Europe is not the only government leaning on these citizenship by investment programs. Caribbean citizenship by investment is under pressure from more than one direction, and it has been for years. Canada withdrew visa-free entry for Antiguans in 2017 over CBI-linked concerns. A United States proclamation then restricted several visa categories starting in 2026, before a partial settlement preserved access for citizens who already held previously issued U.S. visas. Now layer in Europe's 2028 deadline on top of that. A critical feature that made a Caribbean passport valuable for many investors, broad visa-free travel, is what three of the world's most powerful jurisdictions are chipping away at. But now, instead of just threats, they have a deadline and constraints. So if the EU is moving to close the door on Caribbean citizenship, the obvious question is what's left? Where in Europe can you still secure residency the Commission can't touch? We covered, in one of our most watched videos, the 8 European golden visas the EU cannot kill. It's the clearest look at what's still standing in Europe and why those programs are built to survive similar pressures that are now on the Caribbean programs. It's on your screen now. Give this one a like and subscribe so you catch the next development the moment it breaks.